Episode 2, which is based in Masham, Yorkshire. My name is Natasha Billson. I'm the host of Behind the Trowel, and today I am joined with some amazing individuals who I've had the pleasure of working with on and off screen. A little bit about myself first, just in case, which I have a habit of not introducing, so I'm going to start trying. My name, as I said, is Natasha. I'm a commercial field archaeologist based in London. I work across the UK, and my role in the show is to be one of the lead archaeologists who presents the information to you, the audience. And I had the privilege of working with these amazing individuals. Shall we go first with Lizzie? If that's okay, Lizzie, please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Lizzie Craig Atkins. I'm a human osteologist. I'm based in Sheffield at the University of Sheffield.
Brilliant. And Frankie.
Hello everyone, I'm Frankie Wildman. I'm a field archaeologist and I work for Solstice Heritage.
And Chris.
Hi everyone, my name's Chris Scott. I'm also a field archaeologist and director of Solstice Heritage, and it was our role on the show to dig the trenches, work with the local community, local residents, and do a lot of the recording and that kind of thing.
Brilliant. Oh, and we actually have another guest joining us right now. Again, this is a live streamed event, so who knows what will happen with technology. And here we have Chloe, Dr. Chloe Duckworth. Hello, and thank you for joining us. Please give us a little quick intro. Oh, sorry, Chloe, you just had me now. Is it okay if you just give a quick introduction, please?
Hello.
Hey.
Sorry, I've just rejoined, so I might have missed whatever you just said.
Oh, we were just all introducing ourselves, and it's now your turn to say hello.
Oh,
and who
hello.
You are.
Hi. So I'm Chloe Duckworth. I'm one of the presenters on the Great British Dig, and I also work as an archaeologist in an academic context at Newcastle University.
Brilliant. So where to begin? First of all, how are you all after watching the episode on Wednesday? How does it feel to see it? Because we filmed that, I can't actually remember, September, October last year, in the midst of a pandemic. It was definitely an experience, and working in archaeology in general has been a challenge. I'm sure Chris and Frankie, you can add to that. It's been really hard to adapt to being a field archaeologist, working all the time, and it's so hard to keep distance, right? When when we're working, and when you're filming, you're so conscious of it as well.
It's been really interesting. Archaeology really is a team sport, so it was quite difficult to work on site and not be next to people. You're so used to being able to do that, so that was really difficult. But from my point of view, it was great for our whole team, because it really gave everybody gave everyone such a social experience that actually in our normal day-to-day job was really difficult.
Definitely. Frankie, how was the experience for you? Because you're one of if I remember correctly on this episode, we don't really get to see you that much, but you were there. I know you were there. I was talking to you all the time, and unfortunately, it's just how it is, isn't it? In the edit, and sometimes not everybody gets to be in it. But you're in the first episode. I remember seeing you in the first episode. Yes. This episode was more focused on the human burials. But how was the experience for you excavating human remains? And
I am trained as a human osteologist as well. I was trained at University of Durham. But most of my experience has actually been with cremations. So actually to excavate an inhumation was a really good experience. And then knowing where the bodies were going to be, to say the least, was helpful. Yeah, it was really good. I mean, yes, COVID was an issue with the size of the trench and being able to work with other people, but initially I am interested in human remains, so being able to find one so perfectly preserved, such as the young lady, that was just amazing.
Mm. And Lizzie, how was it being in the trenches again?
Well, it's quite unusual for me to be out on site that much at all. Most of the work I do is based in the lab. So it was really nice to be out on site to actually see material being lifted and then to be able to do some analysis actually there on the spot. And the tent was a really nice place to be. It was the driest and the warmest part of the whole place. It did threaten to blow away on a couple of occasions, but it did stay. But it was just really nice to kind of be there and see the whole kind of process kind of unveiling over the days.
It just reminds me of that scene where where Hugh comes in with the tray and you're just like, no, that's not human.
Oh God, yeah.
I don't want to kind of disappoint people, but at the same time, there was no point in kind of prolonging the agony.
It's true, but it's you know, just when I saw that, I was like, yeah, that's literally like just being at work. Someone's like, nah, you're next time, better luck next time. You know, that's just that's something else.
It's quite a common job as someone with osteological experience on any archaeological excavation is having trays of things brought to you. And very often people are hoping that they've found human remains, because I think there's something very immediate and very interesting about excavating human remains. And more times than not, you have to disappoint people by explaining that probably what they've excavated is a midden or a rubbish deposit, and what they're looking at essentially are the leftovers of someone's dinner, animal remains.
What made me laugh more was the fact that he walked straight out of the tent with the tray when Hannah was in the tent with you.
That's really important. Well. Animal remains are really interesting as well. It's just a disappointment of not being what he really was expecting.
It's worth saying, isn't it? Because I think Hannah, who unfortunately can't be with us right now, would say, well, the animal remains are absolutely interesting. And of course they are. And it's that thing that you get when you're kind of looking for a particular thing, which is always dangerous, actually, where you're very disappointed when you don't find the exact thing you want to find. And that's just us. I so empathise with you, Lizzie. And yet, you know, with me, it's usually me telling people, well, actually, this isn't the remains of glass production, which is way less fascinating than being anything to do with dead people. And yet still, you know, it's horrible when you have to tell people, no, actually, this isn't what you think it is.
It just reminded me, I must admit, looking back, especially being in those moments where it is a community dig, so you feel when people are excited, you feel it, right? From the people who own that land, or the locals who are coming to see us in the huts, like they're really so enthused. And I love that interaction. But, you know, for example, glass, I never gave it a second thought. I would just put that in a bag and that would be it. Okay, if I found it, I'd put it in my finds bag, label glass, and that would be it. And I must admit, working on the show, working with Chloe, who would get so excited over glass, it gave me another appreciation for it. So I must admit, like, it's the same thing that Hannah must get and Lizzie must get when, you know, you're looking at bones and is it animal or is it human? It's the same thing, really. It shows we all appreciate different things and we get excited over
for sure. Deposits. Yeah, but there is something I think immediately captivating about human bone, and I think this episode has shown that the way that people have felt about it, that connection, that you just don't get. You know, I mean, I love my research specialism, of course I do, but I think when you're like Lizzie, and you do actually look at something that everybody feels some kind of deep connection with, I think that is very powerful.
Yeah, because archaeology is always about people, but in when you study human remains, you have that immediate connection to those people who lived in the past.
And how was it seeing the facial reconstruction? For me, that was like, I've never seen that before. I've never had the opportunity to be, you know, seeing something so fast, you know, produced. How did that feel to see it, all of you, all your experiences? How did it feel? Let's go with Chris first. Go on.
Go on. Okay. I think from my point of view, I was lucky enough to work in that trench, and we excavated that burial. And like you say, from my point of view, same as you, Tash, really, it's just not something that most of the time you have any ability on an archaeological project to do. That makes it really, really special, especially having worked on excavating that burial. So special to be able to have that. And yeah, just felt really, really lucky, really, really fortunate to work on it. The program gave us that opportunity, which was incredible. And you really do feel a real connection with that person, not just from the excavation of the remains, and that, having done that a number of times before, that's there anyway, but it was just so much more immediate with when you could put a face to that person. Just incredible.
Anything to add? Lizzie, have you ever had that experience before? I'm curious.
I have been involved with projects before that have done facial reconstruction, but not using the technique that Caroline used. So kind of many years back, the technique was based on kind of clay modelling. So you would build layers of musculature and then soft tissue, essentially just using lumps of clay. And it's an amazing technique to watch. It's so skillful, and it combines both artistry and anatomy in a really intriguing way. But the technique that Caroline used was completely new to me. It was all digital. It used the same sort of principles, so it's based on an understanding of human anatomy, and combining that with information she could feed in about the identity of the person. But it produced such a different output, and I think there's something so realistic about the digital method that really has that immediate link between now and the past. I've never seen any of the individuals I've analysed look like that, and it was really impressive, and also kind of really exciting too.
And Frankie?
Oh, I admit I was a wee bit disappointed that the skull that was taken out from my trench, which is the wee one, was so in poor condition that this was not able to happen. But the fact that we were successful in taking one person and then going bish bash bosh, here you go, here's his face, and it's just awesome. It's really cool.
And Chloe, how did you feel when you saw it?
I mean, I loved it because I felt that Caroline did a beautiful job, and she's such a specialist. She knows what she's doing. She did a beautiful job of making him feel like a person that we could all relate to. And that's come across, I think, in the way it's been reported. Actually, I've seen it being reported outside the context of the show. That is a person's face that, when you see it, it doesn't look like a distant person from the past. That looks like a person who you could understand, that we could understand now. And I think that's what's so important, because when we look at people from the past, we're talking about what we call anatomically modern humans. They're the same as us. They're in a different context. They were in a different social context to the one we're in now, but they were us. And I just really felt that, looking at that beautiful reconstruction that Caroline did. And, like I said it, and maybe it's a bit inappropriate, but he's a stone cold hottie. Like, he looked great, and I just love that, because I felt like there is a person that I can feel some kind of connection to. And I thought it was beautiful. I absolutely adored it. Like most people, I've never been on a dig where I've excavated a skeleton and then been able to see some approximation of what they would have looked like in life. And it was absolutely world-changing for me. Such a privilege.
Definitely was. I mean, bearing in mind last year, I was on and off a large cemetery excavation for about 6 months. And honestly, I don't think I ever thought about how that individual looked, like the features. I never thought about that when I was excavating these individuals. And I don't think I ever have thought about how they looked. And seeing this reconstruction, it started to make me slightly think, like, I wonder what their features were like. And it's something I've never honestly. And speaking to Caroline, I remember speaking to her about, because I was a bit skeptical about reconstructions. I'm like, well, how do you know what they look like? How can you, where is the sciences? I just didn't understand. And it was amazing to see the catalogue that she has of all the different facials. And she was saying about the nose, the area, they can do the lip shape. And I was like, how can you do that? Like, it's just, and then she just said, of course, we can't tell their complexion, the eye color or the hair color, that's all guess, or just the type of hair they had, that's guessing, unless we see some, you know, actual hair left. So for me, once seeing it in black and white, then I was like, okay, I get it now. And I love how they you know, she explained that, and that was in the edit. I'm so happy that was in the edit, because when I see facial reconstructions, I've always been skeptical of it. So I'm just glad that we got to see that. Oh yeah, and we've got a comment here from Keith Blackshaw. Face reconstructions always fascinate me, as the question I always think when seeing a skull is, I wonder what they look like. So thanks for that comment, Keith. By the way, for our viewers at home, this is a Q&A, so if you have any questions about the show, please put them in the chat box over on YouTube, and we'll be sure to ask them. Okay.
Could I pick up on that, Tash? Because I think one of the things that I've been talking about it a lot this last week, is that we really were listened to by the production company who made the show. And this is so important, that we know our field and we're trying to communicate it. And it's about thinking about what comes across. And, you know, I'm looking at Frankie here, who did so much of that excavation, and that didn't come across in the edit. And so to acknowledge Frankie and the others who were really the specialists behind this. But on the other hand, what did come across is the process. And I think when we're talking about how we actually go from finding a skull to, you know, imagining what that person might have looked like, I felt that justice was done to that in the show. And that's so important, because as you know, as comments and as public engagement show us, if we just say to someone, oh, here's a skull and here's what they would have looked like originally, that is, I mean, to me, and I work in the field, it's completely mystifying. You know, someone could have just made that up. And I think we saw from what Caroline said, from the placing of the muscles over the skull and everything else that was shown, that, you know, she is basing that on what is present and on the science of, you know, how the human face is built up.
Exactly. And you just reminded me of a comment that we saw on, I think it was on Badger, regarding the fact that the show did not mention about the actual process. Before we even excavate anything that has a human remains, human burial site, we need to have permissions. Chris, maybe if you could just give us a quick sum up of what Solstice Heritage did in regards to permissions, because unfortunately I didn't make the edit.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's worth saying, you're right, it didn't make it into the show, but all of the shows that we've done have involved engagement with local authority, council archaeologists, who are curators of the archaeology in their area. Also, where it's been of value or where it's been required, we've engaged with Historic England as well, and their specialists. In terms of human remains, more particularly, we were involved in all of the gaining of permissions and also the managing of those permissions, both before the show aired, before we did the dig rather, and then obviously during the excavation. So with regards to human remains, that's one of the few parts of archaeology that's governed by law, actual statute law, where a permission from the Ministry of Justice is required, and that we did. So we had a permission to excavate those human remains in place before any of that work was undertaken. And obviously, and that includes the care and respect for the human remains, which is paramount in terms of actually engaging and excavating those people. So that was all in place, and I'm pleased about how that came across in the program. I think it came across quite well, although yes, unfortunately, it didn't get a mention about the importance of getting permission and appropriately dealing with human remains necessarily. But I think it did come across in the show how important everybody took it across the whole team, not just the archaeologists, not just the guys here, but also, to be fair, all the guys that worked on the show from the TV side as well understood that, and actually I think it came across quite well, and you did see how important it was to everybody who was involved.
Definitely. We have a couple of comments. Oh, great. This is from Howard Williams. Hey, Howard.
Hello, Howard.
It's Archaeologist, if I remember correctly, isn't that the Twitter handle? Sorry, Howard, you might have to put it in. I've actually forgotten. He goes, loved episode 1, the format, the discoveries, the locals, everything. I can't wait to see the Masham program, glass bones and all. Sorry, I haven't watched it yet. Don't worry, it's on catch up, it's for free. Watch it while you can stream it. I think there's like 45 days or something on it. So yeah. By the way, if you haven't watched it, I will put the link. I think I have put the link, but in case I haven't, I'll check after the stream is over. You can watch it for free, stream it anytime. That means kind of like Netflix, but free version if you're based in the UK. It's on Channel 4. And she just reminded me of next week's episode. I love the clip at the end, which reminds me, you know how, Chloe, you say a proper medieval?
Classic.
Classic medieval.
Yes, I've already been ribbed for this, for saying it's classic medieval. I can't even remember what I was talking about when I said that, but apparently it was classic medieval.
Don't worry. I remember when we were filming this, I said something about the finds that I had in my hand. I was like, yeah, this is proper post-med. They didn't make the edit. And I was like, phew.
Proper post-med. It's amazing the stuff that comes out of your mouth when you have a camera on you and then you watch it back. You realise the things you say, and it's extraordinary.
That's the thing, because everything we say, we're just saying how we feel. Like at that moment, we're explaining everything, you know. So Lizzie, how was that for you, dare I ask? How did you feel watching that back?
It was all right. It's a bit like, I do a lot of teaching. It's a bit like watching yourself teaching, being in the position of your own student. It's a little bit strange. I have to admit, I did spend the first 5 minutes of the programme hiding behind a cushion while watching it, because there's not many people who enjoy watching themselves on TV, but I got used to it after a while, and I very much enjoyed kind of particularly talking to Hugh about stuff, because he was incredibly inquisitive about the discipline, about aspects of the way in which osteology works. And, you know, I think some of his inquisitiveness came across in the programme, which was really nice.
We do have a question here from Phil Rycroft. Thank you for your question, Phil. Do you consider that you were particularly lucky to drop on burials in so few trenches, even though it was a known cemetery? It just brings back those moments of when, you know, the whole purpose of us was like trying to find the extent. And I'm not going to lie, I know, because you're probably going to agree as well, Chloe can add on to it. At one point, I was like, are we going to get anything? Because, you know, you're just like, is anything going to come up? Chloe, please go on.
Yeah, well, this is why we work with a professional archaeological unit, isn't it? And I'm looking at Chris here, who's representative of that, and Frankie. But, you know, there was work done here before by a number of people. And it's thanks to that we were able to know where to look. But I would add to that we did have genuine research questions. And that's why the trenches that I ended up working in didn't yield anything, but that was good. That was the result, right? Because we showed, okay, we're pretty sure, at least in one of them, we were pretty sure this is not any cemetery under here because of what we were finding there. So, you know, this is, it's so important with all of the stuff that we're showing in the show, in the TV show, to realise the number of people who've gone into this in the past, and the importance of archaeology and archaeological reporting in the construction sector, in the heritage sector. If you go and you look up the archival reports of all the work that's been done before, you're going to find out what's going on in an area. And there are still research questions there. And we were looking at some of those in the show. But ultimately, you have to respect what's been done before. And there was a lot of work that has been done before. There's a lot of work that could still be done there. And so what we did fitted into that. And I just think it's fantastic that we were able, in the context of a TV show, to do some of that and to fit into those questions in a way that was respectful of what's been done before and actually added to what might be done in the future. So without sounding too much like an advert, you know, it's all about respect, and it's about understanding where we fit in.
Unfortunately, Claire's not here to add. Sorry, please. I was going to say, it just reminds me of how Claire, unfortunately, is not here to add about how she was digging, you know, a trench that just had cobbles at one point, right? Just gravel. She found nothing. But that's the beauty of archaeology. You're going to get stuff and you're not going to get stuff. It just depends. Please, guys, continue.
I was just going to say that Caroline and I found the previous research that's been done, particularly on the human remains, incredibly valuable in what we were doing, because we were able to come to the analysis that we were doing in the tent with that prior understanding of the demography of the population. So we knew we would probably find men, women and children. We also knew that the population that was relatively robust, so they were kind of strong, heavy set people, which is exactly what we found with the one skeleton we lifted and analysed in the tent. And we also knew they had a lot of dental wear. And this came up in the programme, which was this contradiction between the really heavy dental wear of the skeleton and the much younger age at death we were getting from looking at the pelvis. And that fit perfectly with that previous report. So we were really armed with a huge amount of valuable knowledge from previous osteologists and previous archaeologists who'd worked on the same site. So, you know, we could just add our data to what previously had been learnt.
Yeah. I think in part to answer the question from my point of view, as I said, we were involved in a lot of the planning of the work. And again, just like Lizzie and Chloe are talking about, in terms of being lucky, yes, we were really, really lucky to drop on burials, but at the same time, a lot of planning went into trying to build a research strategy around that previous work, and that previous work was incredibly important. Some of it done by us, lots of it done by other people, to help us frame that research strategy. And in the end, it worked, because we did find burials in some trenches, and as Chloe said, in other trenches we didn't. And actually, as a sort of outcome from the excavation that we did, that's actually really, really useful, because we knew it's just as important not finding stuff as it in this context as it is finding stuff. Again, I talked about this in terms of Benwell last week, and the importance, I think, of what we did in terms of helping local curators, local archaeologists to look after that site better. Not finding burials in some areas does that just as much as finding burials in other areas. Again, we can help to really sort of focus attention and relevant interest and management on areas where we know the archaeological resource is. And again, it sounds strange, but digging up some of it actually helps you to look after more of it. So in that sense, again, I would say that we didn't just make a piece of TV. We did do a piece of research here. There will be a report that comes out of that, and it really, it does make a difference to those sites that the program's looked at.
Yeah, can I just add to that as well, Chris? Because it might not be apparent to people, but when we say we didn't find burials, we're not saying the extent of the cemetery was here because there were no burials. We're saying it because we're looking at what's actually present and what that tells us about how the land's been used in the past. So it's, it's informative in multiple ways. And it's not just, is there a burial here in this place where I happened to put a trench, which of course I'd just like to hasten to add, Chris knows very well. But it's important to kind of get that across, that there's a lot here in the way that we interpret what we find, that it doesn't necessarily come into the final edit of the show, but it will be there in the reports that Chris and his company are now putting out there.
That's great. And also to add on, yes, we made a show, but as you were saying, there are research questions. And also, in a way, for me, and maybe for Solstice team, it was a way to get funding to answer questions that we've always wanted to know, or you guys have always wanted to know. But at the end of the day, it comes down to money. And as commercial archaeologists, we go where we're told or where there is development. So if we get the opportunity to choose where we want to research, of course, we're going to try and choose places that are special to us at that moment in time, or where we want to show. Of course, this is a TV show about the Great British Dig. And if it had not been filmed during the pandemic, we would have been traveling across the UK. And who knows, hopefully, if there is a second series, we'll be able to travel further. Fingers crossed, depending on the pandemic. And, there's a lot of things that go into it. But just to carry on from that, it's at the end of the day, we're all archaeologists. on this show, and that is, for us, the priority is the archaeology. The TV show just happened to be, there happened to be a film crew there, which brought us all together. But we all have the same goal, which was the archaeology itself. We have a couple of questions and comments. Oh, okay, one from Barbara, great question. I was surprised to see how shallow the grave was when you discovered the bones. Now this was great because people were, I think, quite surprised at just how, I think if I remember correctly, Chris, the one that had where you and Richard were, that one was what, about a metre down, a metre and a half?
Yeah, around about a metre, maybe just a little bit less, yeah.
And where Frankie and Ben were, and where Chloe and I were, it was what, around 80 centimetres?
Yeah, it was a wee bit less than, well, it was similar to Chris's, a wee bit less metre. But I mean, from the programme, there was obviously the information that the burial had disturbed a previous burial as well. So it was like, oh, well, that person could have been even further up or even down, actually. So
yeah, it was, I think, quite great for people to understand just how close archaeology can be to the current ground level. Sometimes like 10 centimeters underneath, you've got an archaeological deposit. And I think it was quite great for people to realize, like, I think honestly people were surprised, especially as you said, as we talked about earlier, when you see human remains, that really hits home because that's an individual. And of course, sometimes we get remnants of a wall or a road, and even that being 10, 20, 30 centimeters underneath is unbelievable that it's intact. So I'm glad that people are surprised by seeing that, because sometimes so are we when we're excavating. You don't expect to see it straight away.
I'd like to add as well, in the trench, in terms of the stratigraphy, when we'd eventually gotten through all the post-medieval contexts, we eventually hit a cobbled surface, and literally probably about 5-10 centimeters underneath that's where we found human remains. And it's just like, well, someone decided to place this potentially medieval cobbled surface slap bang on top of human remains that they may have not been there. So it just shows how, yeah, like you were saying, how close archaeology can actually be to the surface.
Yeah, literally under your feet. I think, as Chloe, there's a line that you even say that in, it's under your feet. Yeah, literally. You can be walking on it right now. Yeah, on the way to the shops, you could literally be walking in archaeology. We have a few more questions. Yeah, please, Lizzie.
The use of land changes over time, and there are lots of places which were originally used as burial sites that over time have been changed in purpose and then forgotten about. And you know, that's often the kind of situation in which archaeologists find human remains.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. This is from Blood Bath Rich. Cool name.
Excellent name.
And they've asked, what would have been your dream UK dig site if you could travel back to be on the team? The likes of Vindanda, Sutton Hill, Chesil Down, Taplow, Ringlemy, etc. What would you have loved to work on? That's a great question. I mean, Sutton Hill is pretty recent, so a lot of people are like, wow, I wish I worked on Sutton Hill.
Sutton Hill is really cool, but maybe not for a human remains specialist, because a lot of the bone doesn't survive at Sutton Hill. It's famous for the sand impressions of the remains. So I'm not going to go for Sutton Hill, but I'm going to continue thinking about it.
Yeah, I'm thinking as well.
When I was at when I was at the University of Bradford, I remember reading up about Spitalfields in London and the cemetery there, and I'm like, probably that one, just because of the vast amount of information that the archaeologists and osteologists got from common people, really. That was quite a profound one that stuck in my mind anyway.
I'm always quite fascinated by sites that have exceptional preservation or unique preservation. So they've mentioned Vindanda, and Vindanda is full of waterlogged remains. So it has all these organic things that you don't normally find. And I was thinking as well of Must Farm, which is a more recent example of this. and you have all these like Bronze Age, just the things from the past that you don't normally think about. And when I was an undergraduate, which was a little bit longer ago than I care to admit, we had a brilliant lecturer called Hamish Forbes, who used to say that every age was the wood age. It's just that most of the wood doesn't survive. And I think about all those things that formed the normal, everyday material culture of people's lives in the past that we don't find because they tend to rot away. So any site, Moss Farm, Vindanda, any site that preserves that sort of stuff that we don't normally find, I would absolutely love to, to be working at.
And Chris, do you have any?
I think for me, it's probably, I'm actually going to pick one that we did on the show. I'm going to pick Benwell because first of all, it's near where I'm from. So for me, that's really special to be able to show that archaeology of the local area where I'm from. But also for me, the sites I love, I think, are where you've got different periods piled on top of different periods, piled on top of different periods. And Benwell was great for that archaeology that people, I think, imagine that archaeologists go to sites, first of all, that we know what we're looking for, which sadly isn't the case always, but also that at each place, the archaeology is of one period or one type of thing, sort of Sutton Hill and its Anglo-Saxon archaeology, or Moss Farm and its Bronze Age archaeology. But actually, so many sites that we work on in my day-to-day job, there's more than one set of remains. So I love Benwell, and it came across in the show because you had the Second World War Anderson shelters there dug through the Roman archaeology. So actually all at the same level. In fact, Second World War sort of the archaeology of 70 years ago, 80 years ago, actually dug down deeper down than the Roman archaeology, higher than it. I love those things that can happen where people live and use the same place over a long period of time, and you get that wonderful juxtaposition of different periods all together. And unpicking that for an archaeologist is brilliant fun, but I think also it's quite mind-bending for people to see,
I'd have to agree, Chris. Like for me, see, I would say I specialize in multi-phase sites, so I'm used to dealing with very complex stratigraphy, so interrelationships, of different time periods all cutting together, and then you have a bit of concrete going through it, right? So you're kind of literally like putting pieces
always
together. Always concrete, always a footing. And that's what I kind of, I guess, specialize in, especially being in London. That's my most experience, right? 7 years worth. So 8 years altogether. But the point is, I think for me, I just love complex sites. For me, it just gets my brain ticking, like, okay, what is going on here? Why am I seeing all these different phases in one area? So it's quite difficult for me to choose one particular site. Every site has its own characteristics and has its own, you have your own love affair with it. It's literally a love-hate relationship every site you go on, depending on the weather. So, I mean, you will see that in the 4th episode. That's what I'm going to say. You will see that love-hate relationship coming through in the 4th episode.
The weather is not always our friend.
No. One day you might see us film, if we're lucky enough, you'll see us film during a heat wave in full PPE. Then you will understand the struggles we go through. Okay.
I proof boiler suits winning.
Oh God, yes.
Anyway.
Awful times, flashbacks. I don't know why, but every single heat wave, I am in asbestos gear. I don't know why, but yeah, every single year I'm on a contaminated site in a commercial construction setting in full PPE. Yeah, the hazmat suits, the masks, everything. So I'm good with wearing masks. I'm trained. Okay, let's see. Next question. Laura Hardy. I really love the show. Currently keeping my fingers crossed that we'll get a full dig of the old High Street site in Weymouth. Oh, you know what? I went to uni in Bournemouth. It's pretty close to where Lizzie and I met many, many moons ago. So that'd be quite cool to go back down south. Nigel Sadler. Hey, Nigel. He said, how excited were you to be able to get a complete virtual facial reconstruction done while on site? If it was, yes, it was on site, Nigel. We did speak we spoke about that kind of towards the beginning, but basically we were all excited. It was an absolute amazing experience, to sum it up, and it was done whilst we were there, so we got to see that for ourselves. Definitely one of the highlights to see it. It's amazing. Oh, Howard Williams. Howard said that he dug at Sutton Hill, and all he remembers was sand and more sand. So, I mean, yeah, I love sand, but as you see in the Netflix film, it collapses very easily, so you've got to be careful with sand. Next one.
The one bonus of sand, though, is it with a hoe it cleans just beautifully. But yeah, anyway.
You are right. And have you been to the site? Like I think I got like red sands once, and it's just magical to see. Like in Coventry, I love the natural in Coventry. It's like a sort of like a red. I know it's such a weird.
I'm sorry. It's thing to say.
It's just beautiful.
My first excavation of a cemetery was actually at Bamborough Castle. It's been a huge, amazing long-term research project in Bamborough. And I excavated at the Bolehole Cemetery, which is actually located in the sand on the beach at Bamborough. It is the most beautiful place. And I was very, very spoilt by being able to excavate as a student there. But it was magical.
Amazing. Don't you have this? You know, we all have our I think it's a great topic of conversation, because we all have our prejudices as well when it comes to different soil types. And I've done a lot of work outside of the UK, and then coming back to the UK and digging here is a dream, because you can see the differences in the soil in a way that you can't when you're digging in the hot, dry Mediterranean climate, which, you know, has its benefits for sure, but it's fantastic. And then I've worked on things like mud brick sites, when you've got walls of mud brick which have then degraded. So you've got a mud brick wall surrounded by degraded mud brick, and you've got to try and work out which bit's the wall and which bit's the degraded stuff next to the wall. I love this. This is like deep archaeology, you know, different types of soil, different types of stuff in the ground. It's great.
We're getting really niche now, aren't we? What's your favourite?
But I love it. Isn't that nice? You know, there is a certain extent to which it is niche, and which a movie like The Dig really actually allows us to almost talk about that a bit in a way that we're not normally allowed to.
I guess it's not normally interesting enough for people, isn't it? But now technically it is. I mean, they've made a film about it, so.
I mean, if Ray Fiennes thinks it's cool, then
that's it.
That's it.
Winning.
I just want to say I love the fact that, you know, Voldemort also plays an archaeologist, like Basil Brown. Like, I'm just like, yes, I love this man even more. He's so awesome. Okay. All right. I'm trying to see the next questions. By the way, any more questions, please send them in whilst I'm like going through them all.
I noticed there was one from Phil Rycroft there. How many days were you actually on site?
Oh,
5, wasn't it? Is that right? But 5. Then I think Frankie and Chris 7.
Yeah.
7?
Yeah, 6 or 7. Yes.
Yeah.
We have some backfit, some setup in advance, and some very, very lovely backfill that at Masham was done in the most incredible rain has ever been seen. So
blancmange is a good description of how the soil, well, we try to not make the soil turn into like the fact that I'm actually going to go into this when we were backfilling and we were transferring dry soil to another trench so that it would be perfectly landscaped on the top. And it's like, oh my lord, this is the next level.
Yeah. So, but we did put everyone's garden back, I promise.
Yes.
Yeah, I just feel bad that, well, we had no choice. I mean, like, they were just told us, like, you're done now. And like, you know, like you see you guys backfilling, I'm like, sorry, bye, I gotta get my train.
Gotta go.
Bad. In a way, it's like, yeah, you've saved me, because backfilling is the worst. I just want to say, anyone who's not done it, if you ever you know, help out in a community dig, please help out with the backfilling. Like, honestly, I've been on community digs where everyone turns up for the archaeology and then they just leave once it's all done. And then I got like a day when I got back for like 3 trenches. I've done it. It's awful.
Yeah, you've done your time. It's all good. Do you know, this is going to sound terrible, but I don't mind backfilling because it's mindless, and I love a mindless task. That you just don't have to think too much. Well, you've got to spread it out a bit. You've got to make sure, you know, but ultimately you can just get in there and do it. As opposed to having to really, sometimes when you have to really think about what you're digging, it's mentally exhausting as well. So yeah, you know, I'm saying that as a person who was privileged enough not to have to stay the extra day to complete the backfilling. So I realised that I'm sounding like a total a-hole here. Frankie's just looking at me like, no, Clay.
No, you've got to find the joy, and I think, and you know, it's part of the job, and so it wasn't that bad really. And but yeah, it is an archaeological project at the end of the day, so it's, you know, all of that went in there, all that set up, and all the stuff at the end, including putting people's gardens back.
I mean, with commercial archaeology, you get the luxury of, you've dug the trench and then the groundsman come in and put a pipeline and then fill it up for you. So when it comes to community digs, yeah, it's like, okay, well, tough.
It's like even with deturfing, like for me, that's actually like, I still that's something I need to perfect. I can't do turf. And I remember, I think did I say it on camera? I can't remember. I know I said it on camera. I don't know if I can't remember if it made the edit, but I was like, I can't do turf. Like, it's just a skill I don't have. I feel like I need to go into the garden and just practice. Like, it's awful. Horrible.
I love a bit of deturfing. We've all got our own favourite thing, haven't we?
That's true.
The thing.
Yeah.
Love a bit of deturfing. Craig Rycroft just put the backfill shuffle. I've met Craig. I met him years ago on a Time Team Dig Village thing. Hi, Craig. But yeah, the backfill shuffle.
Yeah. Maybe, fingers crossed, if we get a second series, we need to get that at least at the back. When they're doing the credits, just have you guys like backfilling, like all just sad faces. Love-hate relationship. Crying. But seriously, it's a shame. I must admit, it was really hard being in the pandemic filming this, because with archaeology, as you said earlier, Chris, it's so much more about team spirit. There's so many things that we would have done that we couldn't do, you know, and even just being like together more, like enjoying that experience, socializing in the evenings, all these things that we weren't able to do. And who knows, that might have even made the edit, if that's good or bad, who knows. But you know, they could have then seen how it is. Oh, I love this comment from Howard. Do you think there will be any Time Team style on-camera arguments in future episodes, i.e. Stuart Ainsworth rocking up and suggesting the dig is in the wrong field? But just reminds me of maybe the next episode. I don't know if it ever made, I don't think we ever got to film it, but when we were discussing something that we can't talk about because it's not been aired yet, but I remember being there watching, I think it was like 6 of us all together, all giving our own theory about something that was, you know, I can't talk too much because it's not been aired. I don't want to ruin it. But something that
we
was
don't
exposed.
know, do we? I think Chris might have seen the final edit. I haven't. We definitely had some disagreements, but they weren't toxic, were they? You know, it was just the typical everyone standing around having their own opinion on it, multiplied by 5, because let's face it, there are quite a lot of archaeologists involved in this, and we all think we're the bee's knees. So I definitely remember in Nottingham standing around having my 2 cents to say And actually, you know, I was totally wrong when we dug it. So
yeah, I'm trying to think actually whether there is any of that in the edit. I'm not too sure, but yeah, probably Nottingham. I think those discussions happen on every single dig in the world ever, but I don't know that there's that much of it in the show. Maybe in Nottingham there's a little bit. Maybe in Nottingham you see a little bit of that.
but it's not, it wasn't really an argument, was it, Chris?
No.
This is the thing. I think, you know, we don't need to go to that kind of, dare I say it, like naughty style reality TV show where everything's conflict based. Ultimately, you always have lots of differing opinions, and we had that. But
like
it's
in
fine,
a normal way.
Exactly. The answer is always, well, let's dig it appropriately and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and actually, it was this more than loads of archaeological projects I've been involved in was so collaborative a process that there really, sadly, wasn't a lot of there wasn't really any upset in that way to report. It was genuinely everybody there trying to understand the archaeology and do it together. The whole team. So I don't think there are any arguments to air, unfortunately, or fortunately.
Yeah, we're a bunch of really boring, nice people.
Yeah, I guess we are.
Yeah.
I mean, look, archaeology. What I love about it is that it's all about the interpretation as well. There is science, and then there's interpretation that helps us, you know, answer these research questions, and that's when it comes back to teamwork. There's something really special about it, and you will hopefully get that in the show, that there is the connection that we all have, and we all met each other on the show. Not all of us knew each other before, you know, and in the space of a day, you make these connections, and you as the audience see it as well. Like, this is us genuinely speaking to each other and showing that enthusiasm and respect for each other, because we will respect each other. That's just how it is within this sphere. And all our we're multidisciplined industry, and we all get really excited when we get to meet each other. You know, to have like Lizzie on site, very rarely will I, even though I've been working for 6 months, for example, last year I was working 6 months, did I have somebody of that position coming down and be there the whole dig? No, you don't have that normally. You see them a few days here and there. So it's just having these experiences that really, I'm so glad that they got to show that. And who knows, fingers crossed, see you guys again soon.
Or let's see, you know, if we have another 4 seasons, wouldn't that be amazing? 4 seasons? Yeah, let's imagine another 4 seasons, like a pizza, and then at the end of it, we're all at each other's throats. You should have dug 2 meters to the left, you fool. You never know.
Anything's possible with archaeology, and especially archaeologists. Anything's possible. Let's see. Again, a couple of comments asking about being on Channel 4. That's out of our control. If it gets aired on the main channel, hopefully, fingers crossed. I mean, the pilot made it to the actual, if I remember correctly, the pilot did make it to Channel 4 itself, didn't it? Yeah. So who knows, guys? Show some more enthusiasm for us doing archaeology, and you might be able to see it on the main channel and get more enthused into history and archaeology as well. Let's see, as we're going on. By the way, experiences wise, Lizzie, how was it for you to be able to engage with the public as well about the, you know, human remains? How was that for you?
I think what was really nice about doing this particular programme was that members of the public were there to see all of the different stages, and you could show people from the excavation stage through to some of the analysis that we were doing, because, you know, there's loads of great opportunities to work with the public in archaeology, and loads of kind of outreach that we do through our professions, but very often the work that I do anyway is sort of after everything's happened. So you'll get a chance to talk people through what's happened already, show them your findings, maybe show them some of the skeletal remains that we've excavated, but they're not necessarily there as it happens. And I think having people kind of wander past the tent, come into the tent, ask us what was going on, and be able to say, well, actually, this is the analysis happening, was yeah, kind of slightly different for me, and also really, really nice.
Anything to add? Chris, how was being able to obviously have your research questions, have a film crew, have the public as well, all engage at the same time whilst, you know, you're trying to do your job? How was that for you, being able to juggle it all? And, you know, Frankie, please add on as well.
Yeah, a lot of people to talk to, a lot of people to engage with, but actually, I think I said this earlier, a fantastic opportunity in the middle of a pandemic to be able to have that amount of, you know, social interaction with people, which was incredible. I think, a bit like Lizzie said, really, it was brilliant to be able to involve people. We do a lot of community archaeology projects with different communities, different groups, and it's some of the most rewarding work that we do. But in this project, I think perhaps even more so than a lot of them, because we had Lizzie, because we had Caroline available as part of the project there, those people got the chance to ask real questions that could be answered by experts rather than just by me. But also they could follow that through and kind of find out in a really rounded way about the process, which was fantastic. I should also say that give Lizzie some extra credit for the fact that the speed osteology that was done by Lizzie to answer those questions instantly, having seen the skeleton for about 30 seconds, was incredible. And how much Lizzie was able to say, both off camera but also on camera, when the camera was pointed at her after 30 seconds of seeing the skeleton. So in that sense, it was amazing, and again, yeah, really, really rewarding from our point of view, and great sort of as a real tonic, rather in terms of a lot of the commercial work that we do where that interaction just wasn't possible.
Speed osteology is definitely a completely new discipline that you've invented just now.
There you go.
But, you know, just to emphasize as well that the full analysis didn't take place there in the tent, and the full proper post-excavation analysis takes place at a later stage, yeah, with an expert in a lab setting, and they will not have to do speed osteology.
Or speed cleaning, definitely, anyway.
I kind of love the fact that as well, that the audience are, you know, they have questions like, oh, when can I read the report? And you're like, well, you have to wait, you know, and it's not a bad thing to say this. This is the reality of archaeology. And for the public, it's great for you to understand that as well, that there is a process that we take pre-excavation, excavation, and post-excavation before it even gets to, you know, to be able to be readable to everybody. There's a really long process that goes into it. So in a way, I'm quite grateful that the show came out a lot more, you know, earlier than anticipated, because it connects people more to the process of it all. We have a few more questions coming in, again from Barbara. I found the show a little emotional this week. I sensed Hugh was taken aback when the age of the individual was identified. How do you all cope with, I think the last part of your message didn't come through, but I assume you mean how do you all cope with maybe knowing the age of the individual? Where to go with that first? Who'd like to start? I don't mind starting. Or Lizzie, would you like to start?
Yeah, I don't mind. I think one thing that you do very easily when you work in osteology is find yourself relating to the individuals we're working with. And I think that's really important, because a key part of the process of what we do is to try and bring aspects of these people's lives back. You know, you're constructing an identity for somebody who had, until the point of being excavated, been largely forgotten. And that is quite an emotional and quite an intense experience. And that's what makes, for me, the field incredibly exciting. It's particularly the case when you're working with certain groups of individuals. So in some of my research, I specialise in the osteology of children, for example. And then also you find examples individuals where you excavate individuals who are, as in this case, perhaps the same age as you are. And that obviously kind of brings you face to face with issues such as death. This person didn't survive beyond, say, the age of 35 years, which is something that kind of can be quite challenging to think about, but is also very reflective of the reality of life in the past. And therefore, it's a valid representation of the kinds of experiences people in the past would have had, which does bring you closer to them, I think, in a lot of ways.
And Frankie, how was that for you to, excavate, as you said, in slightly different circumstances to usual? How was that for you, in the sense of knowing, then finding out how old the individual was?
Yeah, I mean, excuse me, the young lady I excavated and then cleaned, and then we left her to rest. Having done the osteological analysis, albeit in the ground still, and being able to find out how old she was, find out that from the enamel hyperplasia that she had stress in her lifetime, albeit short, and that could have been from, as you said in the programme, due to disease or famine or just hard-working life, and to think like she is younger than me and she didn't get to be my age or just live her life. You end up feeling that emotional attachment to that person, but being able to find them and then gather the information from that. And I thought what was really nice of this one as well was we did leave her to rest in peace, and it will be notified in the report where she is. But yeah, she's been left for, whilst when it comes to like mass cemeteries, it's like you end up having to exhume lots and lots and lots and lots of skeletons. Whilst with this one, it was definitely different going through that process. Yeah.
And just so you know, for the audience, exhume means to lift, to take out the individual. So that's what we mean by exhume, is the technical word for it, just in case everyone's wondering. Anything to add regarding that question?
I mean, I think it's incredibly important, isn't it, that we're respectful when we're dealing with the dead. And my first ever dig as an undergraduate student, which was more than 20 years ago, I was involved in excavating a woman and her very young baby. And there is no way you can do that and not feel some kind of, if not connection, at least some kind of empathy with the people who have been buried, and then think about who buried them and how they felt when they were putting this woman and her newly born baby into the ground. And I just think like it's part of what brings home to you what archaeology is, which is about stories about humans. And that's why we do archaeology and not perhaps, for example, paleontology, or we're looking at people ultimately. And even if you're not a specialist in human remains, you're trying to reconstruct what people did in the past. And there's something about excavating a skeleton or any kind of human remains. There's just that instant, it's instantly apparent that that's what you're doing. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that emotional connection, but also to acknowledge that we have very clear protocols around how we do things, and to stick to them, because they are designed with respect in mind.
Oh, sorry, another question is coming through. I mean, it's beautifully said, Chloe, as well. And then just adding on, Nigel said that respect certainly came across very well. Thank you, Nigel. It's just us speaking how we were feeling in that moment. And honestly, it's one of those things, we're just speaking how we're feeling, what's going on, we're describing, and it's interesting for us to watch back quite a few months later to see how that is, how that's shown.
If I may, Tash, I'd add to that I had a massive ego trip this week, because I made a few comments when I was with Hugh and with the lovely Reverend in the churchyard there, about immigration and the archaeology of that. And there is a huge ego trip to seeing words that you've said, just stuff that's come out of your mouth, and then somebody's edited that and put some crescendoing piano music on it, and made it into a TV moment, as it were. And wow, gotta deflate my ego a bit after that. There is something just unbelievable about making TV where, just in case anyone doesn't realize, like, we're not scripted. We don't have lines fed to us. Everything we say, we've said. So if it's nonsense, it's our own nonsense that's come out of our mouths. But there's something quite dangerous, I think, about that ego trip of actually being able to put across your points of view and then having them kind of glorified in that way. I don't know how you feel about that, Tash, but I certainly felt that this week.
I mean, in regards to what you said about immigration, I was like, when I was watching it, I was like, yes, like this is what we need to see. Yeah, and I was not expecting it to make it. I mean, we all were speaking about it, but obviously I wasn't there when you filmed that. We were all doing our own thing in our own trenches, and when I saw that, I was like, beautiful. Like,
but I mean, thank you. That is what archaeology tells us. Like, it's literally there. It's the scientific evidence of that is there. We are not saying this from a political point of view. We're not twisting anything. It's patently obvious. If you look at the archaeology and if you look at the scientific techniques that we can use on people, on human remains and things, it's just there, isn't it? I'm not sure everyone necessarily realizes that. And we're not just talking about from the early medieval period, talking about from the Roman period and way before then.
Yeah. I mean, it's beautifully said. If you haven't seen the show yet, highly recommend it. And that's towards the end, if I remember correctly. We get it in. Anyway, I'm just so happy that was put in. But yeah. We had a comment here from Sophia, who's 10 years old. Hey, Sophia, thank you for your comment. And she goes, I watched your show, her and her dad watched the show yesterday after watching The Holy Grail, and they wanted to know if you're not worried about getting any old diseases when you're digging up human remains. I think, Lizzie, maybe you can start this off.
Yes, so all of the human remains that we excavated on the show are from far enough back in the past for any diseases that those people might have suffered from to no longer be catchable by people today. So there's no risk whatsoever in catching any diseases that those people had, even if they had kind of very infectious things like tuberculosis, for example. There's things you can catch from soil. Ultimately, all archaeologists will have their tetanus vaccinations up to date and make sure that they're protected against catching any bugs from the soil. But in many ways, the process is a very, very safe one. So don't be put off by getting diseases.
I just to add to that, I think though, one of the things that excavating human remains does teach you is to be thankful for your GP and for your dentist.
NHS.
Thanks, Frankie. So I think we talked about the incredible dental wear the skeleton that was excavated on the show had. I as well as thinking about all those things that Chloe and everyone was talking about in relation to how archaeology brings you closer to people in the past, and there's nothing more more obvious than when you're excavating human remains. But I always think about how glad I am to have a dentist.
I'm actually surprised when I watched that edit back. I didn't realize that the teeth, when you looked at the teeth, you thought of an older date, and then you looked at the pelvis, and actually they were younger. I didn't realize that. I mean, that was quite interesting to see that.
Yeah, there was an awful lot of dental wear, and as I said that before, that matched up with what previous osteologists had found from skeletons, from previous excavations, and this is something we sometimes come across, the fact that sort of almost different parts of the body are aging at different rates, and that's because of the kind of lifestyle that people led. So the really kind of standout observations about the people from Masham were, first of all, that they had really heavy dental wear. So either their diet was very coarse, or they were using their teeth for something else, maybe as tools in some sort of way. But also that they had an awful lot of degenerative joint disease, so things like osteoarthritis, and at quite a young age as well, which would suggest a pretty hard life, very active life as well.
Okay. And then another question here from Howard. Do you feel that the pandemic brings an extra dimension of poignance to burial archaeology, from the fiction of the dig film to your excavations?
Ooh.
It's a bit of a hard question, isn't it? Let's think about that one. Chris,
Yeah,
I see you thinking.
Okay. I think it brought a poignancy in terms of appreciating the social experience of what we do, and appreciating that anew, appreciating the teamwork that went into making the show, from my point of view, certainly. And it brought, I suppose it probably brings an extra level of appreciation to the study of people in the past, and different struggles and different life ways in the past than I think perhaps when you're quite insulated in a modern existence, that you're not face to face with for most of the time, I would say, or certainly I'm not.
Isn't there that thing as well? I mean, but kind of springboarding from what you said, Chris, that I just think we are, since we have modern vaccinations and we have modern medicine, we're so divorced from that absolute terror of disease. And then, I mean, some years ago, there was the HIV crisis and the AIDS crisis, and now we have coronavirus, and those things just bring that back home into sharp relief in a way that we're normally able to just ignore them and get on with our lives in the place where we live, which is very privileged. And it's amazing to think about how much disease and death were really the defining terrors of people's lives in the past, before we had modern medicine, throughout pretty much all of human history. I'd say at least since the Neolithic, since people started living together in close quarters, as it were.
Yeah, I think I liked that, how it was put in the programme as well, in which yes, the Vikings were coming over and they were doing their thing of pillaging and etc. But the fact that, like, more prevalent would be the fact of like famine or disease would be more of a terror than, invaders coming to your country. Which is the same with today, really. But we are more lucky in the fact of modern medicine and what we have today.
And anything to add, Lizzie?
I'm just thinking about the pandemic's really kind of brought to the fore kind of ways of thinking about those occasions where we do find cemeteries that actually tell us that people did die as part of past pandemics. Because, occasionally we do encounter, as archaeologists, cemeteries where it's really obvious that people have had to be buried relatively hastily, or a lot of people have been buried in very close succession. And these things that are the kind of the practical and pragmatic responses to these awful events when they do happen, the fact that there are still these kind of processes that have to happen behind the scenes of managing death and dealing with the dead and burying the dead as well, which we can see in the archaeological record.
For our viewers at home, we're coming up towards the end of our live stream. We're coming up close to an hour and a half. So if you have any last questions, quickly get them in. But let's think about it. You know, it was such an experience to be a part of this project. The fact that it was based in this beautiful, idyllic location of Masham, and the people, how welcoming they were, I think it added so much more to working on this project, because it is a community excavation. It's all about engaging with the public and identifying these research goals. What were the highlights for you all? Let's go with who's ready. Either Lizzie or Chloe here, I can see, is ready to answer the question. Chloe, maybe? Who's first? What was your highlight?
Highlight was, I've got two highlights. One was the excellent little local shop that sold amazing outdoors gear, where I bought a beautiful scarf, which I still use. And the other one was Hugh Dennis buying us all fish and chips from the really blooming delicious local chip shop as well. What a nice place. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that all of us had made some kind of vague plans to retire there during that week. But yeah, what a lovely place. Two excellent breweries there as well, for those who like their beer.
Which didn't make the show, by the way. I had so many messages from my mum's friends being like, why don't you taste any beer? I was like, what? They're like, on camera, I see no one drinking beer. You have two breweries nearby. That's the most famous in that region. Yeah.
I think the combination of drinking beer and excavating human remains is probably not advised.
No, definitely not. No. Lizzie, what was your favourite moment?
Mine was also going to be fish and chips, as my niche hobbies, human osteology, connoisseur of northern fish and chips. Actually, what was really nice was the fact that Caroline was from around the area. So time we spent in the tent waiting for human remains to be brought to us to analyse. There was a lot of reminiscing going on. It was a really nice kind of work holiday almost.
Brilliant. And Frankie?
I mean,
favorite moment. Why not? Let's go for a moment, or something that you remember from the excavations or experience of
if I'm being
filming there.
I mean, Masham is gorgeous. I've never really been there before. But to be honest, when it comes to the Solstice Heritage, we are now working from home. And it's very rarely that we actually get to work with our colleagues in the field. So to have the opportunity to work with like Chris, Jim, Scott, and then you got Natalie and the volunteers, and then you guys as well. It was a good experience, because now currently I'm doing watching briefs on my own. Yes, I'm with other people, but actually to work with your colleagues who you get on with makes all the difference. And you definitely appreciate that now. During this pandemic, you appreciate the people you work with.
Definitely. And actually, whilst we're speaking to Frankie and I met each other on Instagram, and we had this moment, didn't we, where we locked eyes in the canteen by the food. And we're like, wait a minute. We're like, we know each other. And we're like, Instagram.
Yeah.
The beauty of social media networking. That wonderful moment, going towards getting our food. And that brings me on to, by any chance, so for our viewers at home, Frankie is just amazing at tailoring. She creates these beautiful pieces that you can find on Instagram. And I mean, even look at the backdrop right now. You know that she's got some extra skills there, not just archaeology, something else going on here. Do you have any of your pieces that we can see? Have you got anything in the background?
Yes. I mean, casually, as you do. I'm currently working with my friends.
And you made that?
Yes. And my cocoon coat.
Oh, 1 second. I can't hear you properly.
Oh. My cocoon coat is on the sofa, which I'm sorting out. And then, the scarves behind me, I am making some more wall hangings as well, which I will be then selling. So this isn't a plug or anything, but
No,
Frankie, are
brilliant.
you
Why
joining
not?
us for the episode where we talk about the site we digged? Yeah, I know what I'm doing. Are you going to join us for the live stream after the World War One, World War Two site? Because I happen to know that Frankie has some pretty cool costumes that she
Yeah,
could
and I
relate
think you
to
should
that.
wear, and you should be wearing it, I think, if you join
I
us.
want to see you coming along wearing one of those.
Okay. Got to make the choice of which one now. Oh.
Just
Amazing.
bullying you into it on a live stream. Not really fair, is it?
As you do. No, it's I mean, I enjoy doing it, so the chance to get dressed up, yes. But even more into living history kit as well is even better. I'll try and pick the right one.
And are you taking any commission pieces at the moment? Like, do you commission works, or how does it go?
I've just completed a First World War girl guiding leaders uniform, and that was for a friend. I'm taking it very much on a one-by-one basis. Eventually it will mold into something more, but yeah, I'm very much just learning as we go. Yeah, that's good. Yes, check out my Instagram.
Definitely. Actually, Frankie's link to her Instagram is in the description, so you can click on that and have a look, have a little gander. And that's the thing, like, most archaeologists you meet are just like amazing. Like, they have so many skills that you would not expect when you meet them in the get-go, when you're in the trenches or in a lab. There's so much more to them than our job, even though I think our job is also our hobby, because we wouldn't be doing it otherwise, would we? We love it dearly, but there's so much more that we do. So it was great. I'm so glad that the viewers at home got to see that, Frankie. Why not? Why not use this opportunity? Chris, what was your favourite moment for this episode?
I think I'm still blown away by the fact that Frankie said we get on, and so that was really lovely. So, building on what Frankie said, to be honest, I think it was great. My favourite moment was the whole thing, working with everyone, the whole team, both in the sense of obviously getting our whole team from Sources Heritage together, which is rare. Because we're all off doing various other things, but also interacting with specialists then and there. So what Lizzie brought to the project then and there, what we were able to learn, what I was able to learn from Lizzie, Caroline, Hannah, Dave, was fabulous. Then, because you just don't get that on a normal project, and so the opportunity to do that was fantastic. And obviously all of the engagement with everyone in the community who was so fascinated and asked us loads of questions, which is brilliant, because if we're not answering those questions and if we're not enthusing people, then I think Chloe said this last week, we're not doing our job properly. So it's all of that was brilliant for me, because as Frankie said, we're not most of the time when we're just not able to do that, especially at the moment. So for me, it was just a real joy to be out and about in such a beautiful place as well.
And Chloe, anything to add? You haven't said anything, have you yet, Chloe? I've actually forgotten now.
Me, I think I started by saying a whole bunch of stuff, but I've always got those. So, but do you know that is true though? Because a lot of the archaeological processes, you have lots of specialists at different stages in that process. So being able to bring everyone together and everyone communicate at the time of the dig was great. It's a real privilege.
I have to agree with what you just said there, Chloe. Like, it was so nice to have the opportunity to speak to so many people, all archaeologists with different specialisms. It was so nice to have that, and not have the same pressure that you normally do, like day to day, working on a construction site. It was nice to have people really enthusiastic to have you there, to be digging. I really just enjoyed that. And of course, meeting the crew and working with Strawberry Blonde and everybody associated with them, it was an absolute pleasure. And
Yeah,
just a
so
couple of comments.
Strawberry Blonde being the production company, because that's the bit we leave out of this a lot, isn't it? But all the people we were working with, there were also all these people with cameras and microphones who were always there, recording everything we said. Sometimes a little bit not always welcome in some of the times when they're recording you and you're just trying to think, and there's someone there with a boom mic in your face. But it was great, wasn't it?
It's all an experience, and you know what, I think it was quite nice to see other people's reactions to what we were finding, because you know, when we're working with each other, sometimes we forget how special a small piece of pottery might be to somebody else. They're like, what, how old is it? And sometimes you forget, like, wow, that is amazing actually. You know, which maybe we take it for granted. So it was a lovely experience to be able to explain what was going on to them as well. But of course, a lot didn't make the show. The episode was mainly sort of focused on more of the human remains. There was a lot more, I'm trying to remember, there was a few more things that had happened that were filmed, of course, but there's only so much archaeology one can make in a 1 hour segment that's somewhat interesting to everybody. So definitely it was so much fun. And a couple of comments before we round off tonight's live stream. Is there anything that anybody wanted to add in particular? Whilst everyone is thinking, I'll quickly just do a couple of shout outs and thank yous. Keith, thank you for your comment. Fantastic live stream with some great questions and answers. Fingers crossed for many more series. Can't wait for the next show. Thank you. Peter Savin, great to have archaeology back on the TV again. 100% agree. Especially it's so nice to see real archaeology on there, you know, the pros and cons of doing, you know, of working in the industry. I love it. Nigel Sadler, you all have style. Thank you, Nigel. And then we have yes, how did you know this?